I don't think people realize how far we have fallen from the Garden of Eden, where things were perfect. Everything was in God's perfect order, and it was just as it should be. But we have fallen so far, especially in the last 100 years. It's important to know that. It's important to know what evil has done to our culture, to us. It's important to know how it operates in our daily lives because it's the enemy. And our biggest weapon against it is truth. That's why on Sundays we do literary archaeology, to dig back in history through writings to see who did we used to be exactly, somewhere between the fall and now. Because that's the truth of who we are. And that's power. Welcome back to Far From Eden. We are still working our way through the 2 volumes of Grimm Brothers fairy tales that they released in 1812 and 1815. We are starting the first tale of the 1815 volume. These were written down and published so that people could know who they are and keep it. And that was something the Grimm brothers found very important. And interesting that it's erased from people's brains. They don't know the fairy tales. They think Disney came up with it. I've been asking around, and they think Disney came up with some of these tales. No. But they sure do, the overlords sure do want you to think that so that they can erase the old versions where the truth lied. And just peeking at the first sentence of this tale, you'll understand exactly what they were trying to hide, who we were and what we always knew. This one's entitled The Poor Man and the Rich Man. In olden times, when the dear Lord himself was still wandering the earth among mortals, he happened to grow tired one evening, and night descended before he could reach an inn. Then he saw 2 houses right in front of him, just opposite one another. One house was large and beautiful and belonged to a rich man, and the other was small and shabby and belonged to a poor man. Our dear Lord thought, I'm sure I won't be a burden to the rich man. And he knocked at the door. All at once, the rich man opened the window and asked what he wanted. A night's lodging. The rich man examined the traveler from head to toe. And since the dear Lord was dressed very simply and didn't look like he had much money in his pockets, the rich man shook his head and said, I can't put you up. My rooms are full of seeds. If I were to put up all the people who knocked at my door, then I'd soon have to go out begging for myself. Look for a place somewhere else. I know you guys in the chat are starting to say, wow, this is very similar to, Christ and the inn and coming as a humble man. Let's see where it goes. With that, he slammed the window shut and left the dear Lord standing there. So the dear Lord turned around and went across the street to the small house. No sooner had he knocked than the poor man already had the door open and asked the traveler to enter and spend the night in his house. It's already dark, he said, and you won't be able to go much farther tonight. The Lord was pleased to hear that, and he entered the house. The poor man's wife welcomed him by shaking his hand. She told him to make himself feel at home and to feel free to use anything they had, even though they didn't have much. Whatever they had, he could gladly have. Then she put potatoes on the fire, and while they were cooking, she milked the goat so that they would at least have a little milk with the meal. When the table had been set, the dear Lord sat down and ate with them, and he enjoyed the meager repast, sorry, I'm not familiar with that word, because there were grateful faces around him. It warms my heart already, being grateful for what you have. When they had eaten and it was time to go to bed, the wife whispered to her husband, "Listen, dear husband, let's make up a bed of straw for ourselves tonight so that the poor traveler can sleep in our bed and rest. He's been traveling the whole day and he's probably very tired." "That's wonderful," he answered. "I'll go and offer it to him." And he went to the dear Lord and told him that, if he did not mind, he could sleep in their bed and give his limbs a proper rest. The dear Lord didn't want to take the old couple's bed, but they insisted until he finally took their bed and lay down in it. Meanwhile, they made a bed of straw for themselves and lay on the ground. The next morning, they were up before daybreak and cooked a pitiful breakfast for their guest. When the sun began to shine through the little window and the dear Lord stood up, he ate with them again and prepared to continue his journey. As he was standing in the doorway, however, he turned around and said, "Because you are so kind and good, I'm going to grant you 3 wishes, and they shall indeed be fulfilled." Okay, God is not a genie. He's not a genie. I don't like it how like modern Protestants act like he is, but this is for the story. So, oh, there's nothing I want more than eternal salvation, said the man, and also that we stay healthy and get our meager daily bread as long as we wish. And for the third thing, I don't know what to wish. This is truly where our hearts should be. These are the things that should be important to us. "Don't you wish for a new house in place of this old one?" asked the dear Lord. "Oh, yes," said the man. "I'd certainly be pleased if I could have that as well." Right before his departure, the dear Lord fulfilled their wishes, turned the old house into a new one, and departed. When the rich man got up, it was broad daylight. As he looked out his window toward the other side of the road, he saw a beautiful new house. His eyes popped wide open, and he called his wife and said, "Take a look. How did that happen? Just yesterday, there was a dumpy house standing there, and today there's this new beautiful one. Run over and find out what happened." So his wife went over and asked the poor man, who told her, "Last night a traveler came by looking for a night's lodging, and right before his departure this morning, he granted us 3 wishes: eternal salvation, good health, and our meager daily bread for the rest of our lives, and a beautiful new house in place of our old shack." After the rich man's wife heard this, she hurried back and told her husband what had happened. Then the man said, "I'd like to tear myself in two and beat myself to a pulp. If I had only known. The stranger came to our house first, but I turned him away." "Hurry," said his wife, "and get on your horse. The man hasn't got far. You must catch up to him and get him to grant you 3 wishes too." Now the rich man mounted his horse and managed to catch up with the dear Lord. He used sweet talk with the dear Lord and begged him not to take it amiss that he had not let him into his house right away, for he had gone to look for the door key, but the stranger had disappeared in the meantime. I'm going to lie to the Lord. The rich man assured him that if he passed by again, he would find a place to stay at his house. Very well, said the dear Lord. If I come back again, I shall stay with you. Then the rich man asked him whether he also could have 3 wishes like his neighbor. The Lord said yes, but that they would not turn out well for him. And it might be best if he refrained from wishing for anything. Very interesting. The rich man disagreed and asserted that he'd be able to choose something good if he knew for certain that the wishes would be fulfilled. Yeah, depends on where your character is, isn't it? That kind of determines where you'll go because it determines what your desires are and what your priorities are. And if your desires and priorities are wrong, against God's will, it will turn out bad. It reminds me of feminism a little bit. Okay. Just ride home, said the dear Lord. The 3 wishes you make shall be fulfilled. Now the rich man had what he wanted, so he rode home and began to ponder what he should wish for. As he was thus steeped in thought, he let the reins drop, and the horse began jumping so much that his thoughts were continually disturbed, and he couldn't collect them. He was so annoyed by the horse that he lost his patience and said, I wish you'd break your neck. As soon as he had uttered those words, boom, he was thrown to the ground, and the horse lay dead and didn't move any more. Thus the first wish had been fulfilled. Since the rich man was greedy, however, he didn't want to leave the saddle behind, so he cut it off, swung it over his back, and proceeded on foot. Despite all this, he consoled himself that he had 2 wishes left. As he went walking through the sand under the blazing noonday sun, he became hot and surly. The saddle rested heavily on his back, and he was having a great deal of trouble thinking of a wish. Whenever he thought he had found the right wish, it would seem to him afterward to be too little and modest. At one point, he began thinking about how easy his wife had it at home, where she was probably in a cool room and enjoying a fine meal. Indeed, she is. Just the thought of that irritated him so much that before he knew it, he blurted out, I wish she were sitting on this saddle at home and couldn't get off, instead of my carrying it on my back. And just as the last word and just as the last word left his lips, the saddle vanished from his back, and he realized that his second wish had been fulfilled. He became so hot now that he began to run. He was looking forward to sitting down alone in his room where he would think of something great for his last wish. However, when he arrived home and opened the door to the living room, his wife was sitting on the saddle in the middle of the room. Since she couldn't get off, she was screaming and complaining. You should be happy, he said. I'm going to get you all the riches in the world with my wish. Just stay where you are. However, she yelled at him, What good are all the riches in the world to me if I have to sit on the saddle? You wished me up here, and now you'd better get me off. Whether he liked it or not, he had to use the third wish to help her get rid of the saddle and climb down off of it. His wish was fulfilled at once, and so he got nothing from the wishes but irritation, wasted effort, and a lost horse. On the other hand, the poor people spent their lives happily, peacefully, and devoutly until they reached their blissful end. Character matters. It absolutely matters. The rich man wanted things easy, didn't he? He wanted things easy. The poor man didn't. The poor man asked for the most important thing, eternal salvation. And he only said the house because the Lord suggested it. He never would have thought of it, which is why he can be grateful for it. The rich man took everything for granted. He was jealous. He was, he complained. He didn't wish for eternal salvation, did he? And he certainly didn't help the traveler, the Lord, when he stopped by the first time, because he was selfish. Selfishness led to the wishes not working out. He couldn't think beyond himself. He couldn't think beyond himself in the moment. It was all about himself in the moment. Nothing bigger than himself. And isn't that where we are today? People think in the moment, they think comfort, they dream of riches for themselves, and they don't think outside themselves. They don't think of something greater, and they're not grateful. This leads to everything we see today. The divorce rate and how easily women can file. It's because they don't realize that the union they're in is greater than themselves. It's greater than their happiness. It's greater than, the moment. There are things that are eternal, and that's the most important part. And when you have that first, things are better. They're more orderly. And you can wish for meager things. And when you're grateful, you're happy, you're joyful. You can be in a big house. If you're not grateful and you always want more, you're not. And doesn't that sound like a lot of women in marriages? Like if it's never enough and it's never enough, then you're never content. Ever. You can never be. And that's why I say you can't make her happy. But this is true for everyone in their spirit. It's true for the way children are being raised. They're being raised to think of themselves only, their experience, their wants, their needs, their desires, who they are. Are they a boy? Are they a girl? Are they a cat? How about who is your creator? What is your purpose? How can you give to others? How can you share your gifts? Not how can your gifts serve you? It's completely backwards and upside down. Okay. Let's see if I can find one that we have time for. The ones in volume 2 so far seem longer. Unless they put the longer ones in the front. I'm not sure. Because remember at the end of volume 1, we had all those fragments. Anyway, the next one is entitled The Singing Springing Lark. Goodness, why do I not have room all of a sudden? Okay. Once upon a time, there was a man about to go on a long journey. And upon his departure, he asked his 3 daughters what he should bring back to them. The oldest wanted pearls, the second diamonds, but the third said, "Dear father, I'd like to have a singing, springing lark." "Yes," said the father, "if I can get one, you shall have it." So he kissed all 3 daughters and departed. Now, by the time he was ready for his return journey, he had purchased pearls and diamonds for the 2 oldest daughters. But even though he had looked all over, he had not been able to find the singing, springing lark for his youngest. He was particularly sorry about that because she was his favorite. In the meantime, his way took him through a forest in the middle of which he discovered a magnificent castle. Near the castle was a tree, and way on the top of this tree he saw a lark singing and springing about. Well, you've come just at the right time, he said, quite pleased, and he ordered his servant to climb the tree and catch the little bird. But when the servant went over to the tree, a lion jumped out from under it, shook himself, and roared so ferociously that the leaves on the trees trembled. If anyone tries to steal my singing, springing lark, he cried, I'll eat him up. I didn't know the bird belonged to you, said the man. Can I buy my way out of this? No, said the lion. There's nothing that can save you unless you promise to give me the first thing you meet when you get home. If you agree, then I'll not only grant you your life, but I'll also give you the bird for your daughter. Did he tell him that he wanted it for his daughter? The lion just knew. However, the man refused and said, That could be my youngest daughter. She loves me most of all and always runs to meet me when I return home. But the servant was very frightened and remarked, It could also be a cat or a dog. The man let himself be persuaded, took the singing, springing lark with a sad heart, and promised the lion he would give him the first thing that he encountered when he reached his house. When he now rode home, the first thing that he met was none other than his youngest and dearest daughter. Indeed, she came running up to him, threw her arms around him, and kissed him. As soon as she saw that he had brought her a singing, springing lark, she was even more overcome by joy, but her father could not rejoice and began to weep. Alas, dearest child, he said, I've had to pay a high price for this bird. To get it, I had to promise you to a wild lion, and when he gets you, he'll tear you to pieces and eat you up. You know, back then, the fathers were in charge of their daughters. Like, they had to obey. And that's a huge responsibility. You can't just be risking your children like that. And we've seen this theme in several fairy tales. You have to guard your daughters. And do we do that today? Can we even know? I mean, you'd be sued or cops would show up, right? Fathers don't actually have authority anymore at all over their families. That's abuse. But here, and in many of the others where this theme is apparent, I think it's to be like, you need to take your responsibility seriously over your family. I've heard a lot of people say that these times have created soft men. And I think that's true because life is very easy. And good character is born out of struggle and suffering or in a large way. And so we don't stand up to anything, and men's authority has been taken from them, and in many ways they've given it up. Then he went on to tell her how everything had happened and begged her not to go there, no matter what the consequences might be. Yet she consoled him and said, Dearest father, since you've made a promise, you must keep it. I'll go there, and once I've made the lion nice and tame, I'll be back here safe and sound. She's very sweet. Women used to be the ones that upheld the morals in society. I know, that's shocking, isn't it? The 18th Amendment was prohibition against alcohol, and women were a big part in pushing that through. The next morning, she had her father show her the way, Then she took leave of him and walked calmly into the forest. Now the lion was actually an enchanted prince. During the day, he and his men were lions, and during the night, they assumed their true human forms. When she arrived there, she was welcomed in a friendly way, and the wedding was celebrated. As soon as night came, the lion became a handsome man, and so they stayed awake at night and slept during the day, and they lived happily together for a long time. One day, the prince came to her and said, "Tomorrow there will be a celebration at your father's house because your oldest sister is to be married. If it if it would give you pleasure to attend, my lions will escort you there." She replied that yes, she would very much like to see her father again, and she went there accompanied by the lions. There was great rejoicing when she arrived, for they had all believed that she had been torn to pieces by the lion and had long been dead. But she told them how well off she was and stayed with them just as long as the wedding celebration lasted. Then she went back to the forest. When the second daughter was about to be married, she was again invited to the wedding. But on this occasion, she said to the lion, "This time, I don't want to go without you. You must come with me." However, the lion didn't want to attend the wedding. Instead, it would be too dangerous for him because if a ray of light were to fall upon him, he would be changed into a dove and have to fly about with the doves for 7 years. But she wouldn't leave him in peace and said that she'd be sure to take good care of him and protect him from the light. You gotta leave your husband in peace. So they went off together and also took their small child with them. Once there, she had a hall built for him, so strong and thick that not a single ray of light could penetrate it. That was the place where he was to sit when the wedding candles were lit. However, its door was made out of green wood, and it split and developed a crack that nobody saw. Now the wedding was celebrated in splendor. But when the wedding procession with all the candles and torches came back from church and passed by the prince's hall, a very, very thin ray fell upon the prince, and he was instantly transformed into a dove. When his wife entered the hall to look for him, she could only find a white dove sitting there. And he said to her, "For 7 years I shall have to fly about the world, but for every 7 steps you take, I shall leave a drop of red arterial fluid and a white feather to show you the way. And if you follow the traces, you'll be able to rescue me." Then the dove flew out of the door and she followed him. At every 7th step she took, a little drop of arterial fluid and a little white feather would fall and show her the way. Thus she went farther and farther into the wide world and never looked about or stopped until the 7 years were almost up. She was looking forward to that and thought they would soon be free, but they were still quite far from their goal. He was leading her. Husband was leading her. She was following. Once, as she was moving along, she failed to find any more feathers or little drops of arterial fluid, and when she raised her head, the dove had also vanished. "I won't be able to get help from a mortal," she thought. And so she climbed up to the sun and wait a minute. Sorry. "I won't be able to get help from a mortal," she thought. And so she climbed up to the sun and said to her, her, to the sun is a girl. Okay. "You shine into every nook and cranny. Is there any chance that you've seen a white dove flying around?" "No," said the sun, "I haven't, but I'll give you a little casket. Just open it when you need it greatest." She thanked the sun and continued on her way until the moon began to shine in the evening. "You shine the whole night through and on all the fields and woods. Have you seen a white dove flying around?" "No," said the moon, I haven't, but I'll give you an egg. Just crack it open when you need it greatest. She thanked the moon and went farther into the night wind. Farther into the night wind stirred and started to blow. Sorry, farther until the night wind stirred and started to blow. It's translated from German, so sometimes it's a bit awkward. You blow over every tree and under every leaf. Have you seen a white dove flying around? No, said the night wind. I haven't, but I'll ask the three other winds. Perhaps they've seen one. The east wind and the west wind came and reported they had not seen a thing. But the south wind said, I've seen the white dove. It's flown on the Red Sea and has become a lion again, for the 7 years are over. Right now, the lion's in the midst of a battle with a dragon. Welcome to Grimm Brothers Fairy Tales, which is really an enchanted princess. Uh-oh. Then the night wind said to her, here's what I would advise you to do. Go to the Red Sea, where you'll find some tall reeds growing along the shore. Then count them until you come to the 11th one, which you're to cut off and use to strike the dragon. That done, the lion will be able to conquer the dragon, and both will again regain their human forms. After that, look around and you'll see the griffin sitting by the Red Sea. Get on his back with the prince, and the griffin will carry you home across the sea. Now, here's a nut for you. When you cross over the middle of the sea, let it drop. A nut tree will instantly sprout out of the water, and the griffin will be able to rest on it. If he can't rest there, he won't be strong enough to carry you across the sea. So if you forget to drop the nut into the sea, he'll let you fall into the water. That's a lot of instructions. She went there and found everything as the night wind had said. She counted the reeds by the sea, cut off the 11th, and struck the dragon with it. Consequently, the lion defeated the dragon, and both immediately regained their human forms. But when the princess, who had previously been a dragon, was set free from the magic spell, she picked the prince up in her arms. Oh, I knew it. Picked the prince up in her arms, got on the griffin, and carried him off with her. So the poor maiden, who had journeyed so far, stood alone and forsaken again. Man, there are a lot of homewreckers. There's a homewrecker in this story. However, she said, I'll keep going as far as the wind blows, and so long as the cock crows until I find him. You know, you can't wreck a home if the wife doesn't let it. Just saying. None of this, he cheated, I'm leaving. You made a promise, you stay. And you let him, work himself out and you work together. Anyway, that's a tangent for another day. And off she went and wandered a long, long way until she came to the castle where the two were living together. Then she heard that their wedding celebration was soon to take place. God will come to my aid, she remarked as she opened the little casket that the sun had given her. There she found a dress as radiant as the sun itself. She took it out, put it on, and went up to the castle. Everyone at the court and the bride herself stared at her. The bride liked the dress so much, she thought it would be nice to have it for her wedding and asked if she could buy it. This homewrecker, not for money or property, she answered, but for flesh and blood. The bride asked her what she meant by that, and she responded, let me sleep one night in the prince's room. Oh my God. Fairy tales were stories for children. Kinda. But these are very, I don't want to say adult themes because of what we think of that as now, but they're grown up lessons. And that's when we used to have children who grew up to be adults, not a bunch of old children walking around who are, 26 and can't figure anything out. So it's getting spicy. All right, so she just wants to be in the princess room for one night. The bride didn't want to let her, but she also wanted the dress very badly. Finally, she agreed, but the bridegroom's servant was ordered to give him a sleeping potion. That night, when the prince was asleep, the maiden was led into his room, where she sat down on his bed and said, "I followed you for 7 years. I went to the sun, the moon, and the four winds to find out where you were. I helped you conquer the dragon. Are you going to forget me forever?" Oh. But the prince slept so soundly that it seemed to him as if the wind were merely whispering in the firs. When morning came, she was led out of the castle again and had to give up her golden dress. Since her ploy had not been of much use, she was quite sad and went out to the meadow, where she sat down and wept. But as soon as she was sitting there, she remembered the egg that the moon had given her. She cracked it open, and a hen with 12 chicks jumped out, all in gold. The peeping chicks scampered about and then crawled under the mother hen's wings. There was not a lovelier sight to see in the world. Shortly after that, she stood up and drove them ahead of her over the meadow until they came within the sight of the bride, who saw them from her window. She liked the little chicks so much that she came right down and asked if she could buy them. Boy, she really likes other people's stuff, doesn't she? See my catty female side coming out. We are competitive with one another. We really are. Sometimes I hear you guys talking about the sisterhood, and I'm like, I don't know. We have allies. We don't have friends. Not for money or possessions, but for flesh and blood. Let me sleep another night in the prince's room. The bride agreed and wanted to trick her as she'd done the night before. But when the prince went to bed, he asked the servant what had caused all the murmuring and rustling during the night. And the servant told him everything. That he had been compelled to give him a sleeping potion because a poor girl had secretly slept in his room, and that he was supposed to give him another one that night. Dump the drink by the side of my bed, said the prince. That night, the maiden was led into the room, and when she began to talk about her sad plight, he immediately recognized his dear wife by her voice, jumped up and exclaimed, "Now I'm really free from the spell. It was like a dream. The princess had cast a spell over me and made me forget you, but God has helped me just in time." Okay. The princess cast a spell on him, the homewrecker. Also, who are women who cast spells? Witches. There's always a witch, isn't there? Nasty, nasty lady. That night they left the castle in secret, for they were afraid of the princess's father, who was a sorcerer. Of course he was. Evil everywhere. They got on the griffin, who carried them over the Red Sea, and when they were in the middle, she let the nut drop. Immediately a big nut tree sprouted, and the griffin was able to rest there. Then he carried them home, where they found their child, who had grown tall and handsome. From then on, they lived happily until their death. How wonderful. Yeah, that princess / witch cast a spell. Tried to be a homewrecker. Tried to take everything that the other princess, who actually was good, followed her man to the ends of the earth, stayed faithful, did not give up on what they had, no matter what. We used to have women like that, but we also have always had the other type, haven't we? That's the dichotomy. Problem today is that the scales are way shifted to where we have way more of the witchy princesses than we have of the ones who stay true and are of good moral character. And you can't tell who's who, because the ones who are the ones who cast spells can mimic the ones of good character. As she did, didn't she? The prince didn't know. I think that's the spell. That is the spell. To make you think that they're of good character, that they're true to their word, that they're not covetous. That is the spell. And it's to extract things, resources, status, what have you, right? And they've been doing it forever. And that witchy princess, well, she had a dad who enabled her. He was a sorcerer. That's what creates these witches. Is a dad that enables it so many times. So many times. Wow. So much truth. And it's so familiar because it's really not different than what's going on today, if you have eyes to see. Thank you for joining me today on Literary Archaeology. I hope you're having a restful Sunday. I hope you're protecting your peace. I hope you're feeding your souls. I love you guys, and I'll see you on the next one. My phone, you guys, it wouldn't be a show unless I had some kind of technology thing going on. Anyways, I love you guys. Thanks for putting up with me with all my glitches. And I will see you on the next one. Bye.